Let me ask you a simple question. When was the last time you got a raise and felt absolutely nothing? Not excitement, not relief, just slightly less panic. You make more than you did 5 years ago, you work harder, you're more experienced, and yet your bank account feels exactly the same, maybe worse. If you've ever looked at your income and thought, I should be doing better than this video is for you. My name is Evan, and today, this is not a motivation video. This is not investment advice. This is an explanation. Because most people aren't struggling with money due to bad habits, they're stuck inside a mathematical system they were never shown. And once you see the equation, a lot of uncomfortable things will suddenly make sense. Let me describe a completely normal person. They wake up early, commute, work 8 or 9 hours, answer messages at night. They earn a decent salary, not rich, but respectable. On paper, they're doing fine. But here's their reality. One unexpected expense away from stress, constant mental fatigue, weekend recovery instead of rest, a low-level anxiety that never shuts off. This isn't laziness. This isn't irresponsibility. This is structural pressure. And the system quietly normalizes it. Here's the core problem most people misunderstand. We're told that earning more money automatically makes life easier. That used to be true, but modern life doesn't work that way anymore. Today, higher income doesn't remove pressure. It rearranges it. When your income goes up, your life quietly upgrades with it. Bigger housing, more fixed bills, higher expectations. None of this feels optional. It feels normal. And once those costs are locked in, your income stops creating freedom and starts maintaining structure. You're no longer earning to move forward. You're earning to keep things exactly the same. That's why so many people say, I make good money, but I feel stuck. The problem isn't low income, it's loss of flexibility. More income without structural control creates a more expensive version of the same stress you had before. Here's the part no one explains. When people think about money, they usually focus on one number, income. But income is only one side of an equation, and it's not the part that determines freedom. What actually matters is what's left after life takes its share. Every financial decision quietly creates fixed costs. Rent, transportation, insurance. Things you can't easily pause or adjust. Then there are variable costs, food, convenience, daily expenses. These adapt to how tired and busy you are. And finally, there's energy. Energy is the invisible expense, the mental and physical capacity required to maintain your lifestyle. When income rises, fixed costs usually rise with it. So do energy demands. The equation looks balanced on paper, but in real life, it's quietly working against you. That's why people with higher incomes often feel just as trapped, sometimes more, than when they earned less. The hidden equation isn't about how much you make, it's about how much life costs you to maintain. Now let's talk about something that doesn't show up on any budget. Energy. Modern life doesn't just cost money, it consumes attention, focus, and decision-making capacity. This is what I'll call the energy tax. Every day, before you spend a single dollar, you spend mental energy. On commuting, on constant communication, on small decisions that never stop. By the time work ends, most people aren't out of time, they're out of capacity. And when capacity is gone, behavior changes. You don't choose convenience because it's cheaper, you choose it because it's easier. You don't postpone financial decisions because you don't care, you postpone them because they feel heavy. This is where the system becomes efficient. Low energy leads to higher spending, not because of irresponsibility, but because effort becomes expensive. The energy tax doesn't feel dramatic, it feels normal. Takeout instead of cooking, subscriptions instead of planning, impulse purchases instead of delayed decisions. Each one makes sense on its own. Together, they quietly increase financial pressure. What's important here is this: energy loss precedes financial leakage. When energy is drained, money becomes the tool you use to compensate for exhaustion. That's why higher income alone doesn't fix the problem, because the structure that drains energy remains unchanged. At this point, some people ask a reasonable question. If income is the issue, wouldn't a raise fix this? Short term, it feels like it does. Long term, it usually doesn't. Raises don't change structure, they reinforce it. When income increases, it's almost always absorbed by the life that already exists. Higher housing tolerance, more reliable transportation, paid convenience to reduce daily friction. These aren't bad decisions, they're practical responses to pressure. But here's the limitation. A raise is flexible, your commitments usually aren't. So the extra income doesn't create margin, it stabilizes the system you're already in. Over time, raises stop feeling like progress and start feeling like maintenance. You're earning more, but the purpose of that income is to keep stress from getting worse, not to meaningfully reduce it. That's why many people can point to years of raises without any corresponding increase in financial flexibility. The income changed, the structure didn't. This is the part most financial conversations miss. We talk a lot about income, budgets, and investments, but those sit on top of something more foundational: margin. Margin isn't excess, it's tolerance. It's the space that allows errors, delays, and uncertainty without triggering stress. In earlier systems of living, margin was built in. Lives moved slower, commitments were fewer, recovery time existed. Modern life optimized that away. Efficiency reduced buffers. Flexibility was replaced with utilization. From a system perspective, that works. From a human perspective, it creates fragility. When margin disappears, small disruptions feel large. Minor problems demand immediate attention, and long-term thinking becomes difficult. This shifts behavior. Instead of planning for resilience, people focus on avoidance. Avoiding mistakes, avoiding discomfort, avoiding short-term instability. Income doesn't fix that. Neither do better budgets. Education here means recognizing that financial stability isn't about growth alone. It's about designing tolerance into life. Without margin, any system, no matter how high the income, remains unstable. This is where the perspective changes. Up to this point, it's tempting to look for solutions through effort. Higher income, better optimization, more discipline. But those approaches assume the structure is sound. The real shift happens when you stop measuring success by income and start measuring it by flexibility. Money isn't the objective, it's a tool, and tools only work when the design makes sense. A life built for status tends to sacrifice mobility. A life built for optimization often sacrifices tolerance. The alternative frame is structural. How easily can your life adjust? How many things are locked in? How much can change without triggering stress? When flexibility becomes the metric, different decisions emerge. Lower fixed costs, fewer irreversible commitments, slower escalation of lifestyle. Not as sacrifice, but as structural resilience. This isn't about doing less, it's about designing for movement instead of maintenance. So, what does this look like in practice? Not rules, not tactics, a filter. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" the more useful question becomes, "What does this lock me into?" Many financial decisions don't fail immediately. They succeed structurally. They reduce friction. They increase comfort. They feel responsible. But over time, they narrow flexibility. This is why the problem isn't reckless spending. It's incremental rigidity. Each decision makes sense on its own. Together, they reduce movement. The mindset shift is subtle. Value options over upgrades. Value reversibility over optimization. Value margin before growth. This doesn't mean avoiding progress. It means designing progress that doesn't collapse under change. When decisions are filtered this way, stability stops being fragile, and stress slowly gives way to control. This video wasn't about blaming the system, and it wasn't about blaming yourself either. Most people aren't struggling because they're careless, lazy, or bad with money. They're struggling because they were never shown how the math actually works. Once you understand the equation, something important changes. You stop feeling like you're failing. You stop assuming the problem is personal, and you start seeing that much of this pressure is structural. That shift matters, because when you stop feeling broken, you stop making decisions from fear. You stop chasing fixes that don't address the real issue, and you start building with intention instead of reacting to stress. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is understanding. My name is Evan, and this channel exists to explain the financial rules most people are expected to follow without ever being taught. If this helped you see your life a little more clearly, or gave you language for something you felt but couldn't explain, consider subscribing. We're just getting started.